We good, Drew? Okay, first off, I just want to thank everybody for staying. We will try to make this as quick as possible. I know that everybody's excited to get home and watch Christmas movies in the rain today. All right, so we were part of the discernment committee. Myself, Maggie, Hugh is right here. The Robins, Miss Robin Jackson and Miss Robin Dukes, and Matthew Summers up in the balcony to answer any questions. First, we want to start by saying that our job as a discernment committee is not to tell y'all how to vote. Our job is to gather the information, present it to y'all, and then the congregation vote. It is not up to us. It's not our job to sway votes either way. We've tried to be as middle of the road as possible. But having said that, we'll go ahead and get started. So, next slide.
Hello. Also, we can send this presentation to anybody. If they want it, just let us know. We can email it or we can print it for you because we are not going to read it word for word. Okay.
All right, so our task force and objective is to research the current issues facing the church and inform the church council and the church members of the status. Present the church to the church council the findings of the status and inform St. George United Methodist Church members in the event of a split. We recommend the next steps to be task force findings and determining desires of the congregation to stay with the UMC or disaffiliate. So really, what's in question right now is the Book of Discipline, okay? We don't know what's going to happen at the annual conference in 2024. We just know what is going on right now as far as us disaffiliating, if that is what the congregation chooses, okay? So the Book of Discipline was originally published in 1784 and has been published every 4 years thereafter following the meeting of the General Conference. Changes were made at the special called General Conference in 2019, but the last printed edition is 2016. So, current status of the UMC. We've got two facts really. We've got traditionalists and progressives. Traditionalists believe the historic interpretation of the Bible, does not believe in culturally redefining the Bible, and beliefs align with the current UMC Book of Discipline, okay? That's where we are right now. The other side is the progressive side, which includes a wide range of interpretation and theological ideas. They may believe in a few, many, or all views, and they range from moderate to strongly progressive. So, the traditionalist, the language related to human sexuality should remain the same. Marriage in the church is between a man and a woman. The progressive side, all language related to human sexuality should be removed. It allows for same-sex marriage and ordination of practicing homosexuals. And keep in mind, there's a traditional and there's a progressive. There's a middle road here as well. Not everybody is on one end or the other, but the main disagreement is between traditionalists and progressives. Their theology and scripture as far as what each believes. Traditional is the Word of God. Biblical revelation is complete. The Bible is true and authoritative. Experience is subject to Scripture, incarnate, virgin birth, physical death, and bodily resurrection. The progressive views contain the Word of God. New revelation takes precedence over old. Parts of the Bible are true. Portions can be dismissed as not authoritative, not relevant today. Experience supersedes Scripture. May or may not believe in any or all tenets of the Apostles' Creed. Okay, so the steps that we've had to take so far in this discernment process. Our first deadline was December 1st. I'm happy to announce we did make that deadline by about 4 days, I think, but so plenty of time. Our second deadline has also been met. That is January 1st. We have filed a letter to the conference requesting separation, a vote to separate, not that we are separating. Our next deadline is we have to have a congregational vote by March 1st, 2024. We have one scheduled. It was not up to us to schedule it. The district superintendent scheduled it. Our vote will be Sunday, February 4th at 3 p.m. Okay? And I've said this before, this will not be a presidential election. You cannot mail in your ballot. You have to be present. We will not be checking IDs, but you still have to be present, and you have to be a member of the congregation in order to vote. There's no vote by proxy. You must be present if you want your vote to count. All right, we're going to skip some of these slides. Again, like Maggie said, we will definitely send this out to you if you want to take a look at it. Some of this information in here. Basically, what we just skipped, the language within the Book of Discipline has been changed a little bit over time. However, it's pretty much been confirmed what it is currently. They haven't changed it so much. They've added some words here and there since the 60s. But for the most part, the meat and potatoes of it has pretty much stayed the same.
So you can skip probably like 4 slides. But again, we can send this to you if you want to read all of it. And then we can skip even to the membership, but we just kind of put a slide in there about if you are not sure if you're a member of the church, you can check with the office and they'll let you know, but you have to be a member in order to vote that day. So go ahead.
Okay, so the trust clause, all right, paragraph 2501. That's really kind of one of the main things that we've been discussing. All right, the Book of Discipline states that the real property of all local churches, including St. George United Methodist Church, is not owned by the local church. The trust requirement, as outlined in the Book of Discipline, states that all properties occupied by the local church are titled in the conference to be held in trust for the entire denomination. Okay? So the biggest question everybody seems to have is, what is it going to cost us? If the congregation does vote to disaffiliate from the United Methodist Church, what is it going to cost us? Here it is, okay? We've got 10% of assets. This is what we will owe to the conference, okay? 10% of our assets. Any unpaid apportionments for prior year, unpaid apportionments through the date of closure, which if we disaffiliate will be June 30th. Additional 12 months of apportionments, the balance due on direct bill to include amounts owed on debt forgiveness plan, if any, and the church's share of unfunded pension obligations. Now, we've done a little bit of math, and Maggie did some math, and so if it's wrong, it's on Maggie. We don't give the number, okay? The conference itself is going to give us the actual number. And we just read off how they're going to get that number, okay? With our math, what we came up with is going to owe us somewhere around $175,000 to $200,000 as a congregation if we choose to disaffiliate, okay?
And we don't know the apportionments. The unfunded pension liability. We don't know that. We are totally estimating here. They're going to give us that, but we took 12 months, I think. Isn't that right, Ms. Kathy? I think we took 12 months of what that is and came up with that. And then the apportionments are broken down by what we owe for 2022, because we are not up to date on that, if I'm correct, and then 12 months going forward. And then we had the church appraised as well as the parsonage, and that's where that number of 10% of that came from. And then we took the bus, Mr. Roger got us an NADA, right? Mm-hmm. An NADA of the church bus, and we took 10% of that. So you can see that broken down. The accounts on the left are in the white box. This was as of the time I made this last month. So these accounts will change according to whatever they are on 12/31. They take balances as of December 31st. So this is completely for estimating purposes. And unfortunately, it's really a little weird because you got to put the cart before the horse in a way. But we have to vote on this before we know our exact final number, right?
More than likely, yes. So I emailed the DS last week, and they're supposed to find out around middle of January exactly what we owe, because again, the numbers are going to go off of what we have as of December 31st. It's possible we could have that number before we vote, but I would not hold your breaths.
We just need to be prepared of what we think worst case could be. We think. That doesn't mean we know. And so I stress that because I don't want anybody to say, well, you said 200 and it might be 205. We don't know. We're going off of what we did best on estimates. We know the appraisals won't change because those have been performed, and we know everything else can change. The church balances in the accounts can change, and then the pension liability, which they don't really tell you how to calculate that. So we just kind of went off of an estimate of what we compared to another church that did it and what theirs were monthly. So that's kind of how we came up with that.
Okay, one thing we're not going to get in too much to is if we were to disaffiliate, there are a couple of options, okay? Well, for one, if we don't, we're going to stay where we're at, right? If we disaffiliate, then the options, there's a lot of them. I would say the three most popular seem to be, we have the Global Methodist Church, the Free Methodist, and the third option would really be independent. That's not to say there's not some other options out there. In the research that we've done, there's not many other viable options. I would say after doing a little more reading about it, Free Methodist, you might could also throw them out as well. But stay where we're at, global or independent is kind of what our thoughts have been.
I think we all agreed as a committee that we felt that the global was the most similar to the United Methodist. And we broke it down in the slides, which I don't think we should read everyone, but I'm glad to share it if anybody wants to read into it. Or you can actually go to the Global Methodist Church website and you can read a lot of information there, as well as they have a lot of Q&As and just information that is very helpful if you want to really dig into it. But they seem to be, when we did a comparison side by side on the next slides, very similar to what United Methodist has been.
I mean, it practically is. It practically is the United Methodist Church that broke off and became the Global Methodist Church.
The only difference that we know from a financial point, because I know that we as a committee talked about how we weren't sure if we were to disaffiliate, which direction we would go and how people would feel. And one of the concerns is if we choose to go into another, say, global, will we be in this boat again in 3 or 4 years? Will they change something in the book of discipline, and will we have to pay to get out? One thing about global that as of now, we own our church. If we get out of United Methodist, the church becomes ours, and we are not required in global to give the church to global the way that the conference does now, or did back in the 60s.
There's no trust clause in the Global Methodist Church Book of Discipline. So
if we went global and something happened and changed, you wouldn't have to pay what we're paying to get out today. I think that was mostly what we discussed.
Also, one of the differences with the Global Methodist Church, as of right now, if, let's just say, the congregation voted to disaffiliate, we decided to join the Global Methodist, and 6 months down the road, we realized this was the wrong choice. They have a 90-day window. They consider it a 90-day period of discernment and prayer. At the end of those 90 days, we could leave that denomination as well if we were to choose.
I'm just going to skip through some of that.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and skip to in conclusion. All right, thank y'all. All right, so the current UMC issues are the result of decades of intensifying differences. Resolution appears highly unlikely. The number of churches separating is increasing rapidly. St. George United Methodist Church needs to position itself to take care of its members and to be able to meet its vision and mission. The discernment process needs to continue in a timely manner. St. George United Methodist Church needs to decide whether it wants to stay with United Methodist Church or pursue disaffiliation. Again, this presentation is designed to provide additional information, options for our church. Really, we kind of skimmed through those slides. If we vote as a congregation to disaffiliate on February 4th, that's really when we need to have some more meetings about where are we going to go if we disaffiliate. Which, as of come February 4th, we'll know where we're heading. If the church votes to separate or disaffiliate, it will authorize the St. George United Methodist Church Council to take such actions as they deem appropriate or necessary to pursue separation. Does anybody have any questions?
Hey, go ahead.
Just a recap,
Mm-hmm.
because I think some, in conversations with different people, I think people are confused. The bottom line reason that we're considering that we're even having this discussion is because there's a thought that maybe in the future at annual conference 2024, that the discipline will be changed to allow same-sex marriages and homosexual clergy.
Yes, ma'am.
That is the reason we're having this discussion.
That's the most polarizing part, yes.
But right now, currently, the book of discipline does not state that.
Correct. And they have unfortunately forced our hand, which I'll be honest with you, I don't appreciate very much the fact that they're making us make a decision based off the rules we know right now on something that we don't know what's going to happen. They have.
Thank you. So
Thanks. It works.
So is there not if we don't vote and we wait until annual conference 2024,
Mm-hmm.
and they say they changed the discipline to allow same-sex marriages and homosexual clergy, would there not be an opportunity after that annual conference to go through what we're going through now?
We don't know.
I mean,
And the reason we don't know is because if they're changing the book of discipline, are they removing the rules that we have to get out now? We don't know what they're going to change. Well, the clause. Right, we have that one clause, and they could remove that, could they not? So they could remove that clause if they vote. They've lost a lot of churches here recently, right?
I know, but I mean, it seems to me that, my fear is that go through all of this and nothing will change.
Which is a possibility.
Yes, that's
Absolutely,
yes.
absolutely, it
And
is.
so now we're out of the Methodist conference.
But it's also a possibility that
United
a
Methodist.
lot could change.
Well,
And then we're not able to get out. Or
you
instead,
think they're going to really hold our feet to the fire?
I have no idea.
I just don't.
I have no idea.
I would like to know where we stand after the, what?
Regardless of how you feel about the question at hand here, about homosexuality and the change in that, right now, this method of getting out of the United Methodist Church, this clause goes away December 31st of this year. So we don't know when the general conference meets. I think it's is it March? I think the annual conference, when they meet, we have no idea of what rules they're going to say or what the method is going to be to get out should we feel like that is necessary. What we have now with is it 23 or 25, the clause, I can't remember exactly the clause that we're using to disaffiliate. Like I said, it goes away December 31st. No matter how you feel about the direction that the general conference goes, we have this opportunity right now to get out, to get our church back, and not be at the mercy of the general conference. What they may do or may not do.
Okay.
All right.
I misunderstood then. I didn't realize that vote, or that we have this one opportunity?
Right now,
As
that's
of right
what I'm
now,
saying.
yes.
Is
This year.
it goes away, this clause goes away December 31st of 2023. And if we don't do that, we have no idea whether they could let us out. It could cost us more if we wanted to get out. Right now, the conditions are 10%.
I understand. That,
And-
I didn't know about the 12/31 deadline.
Yes, ma'am.
I must have missed that. I apologize.
That's fine. I mean, which is the frustrating thing about it. We know the rules of the game right now.
Right.
We don't know what the rules of the game are going to be after, come January 1st.
Right, I remember you saying that, but it just seems okay.
Unfair?
Okay.
Seems unfair.
If we do vote to disaffiliate, does that mean, and we decide just to kind of become independent or kind of wait around just a little while to see what we want to do before we go with another conference, if you will? This might be a silly question, but do we, all of our United Methodist materials, we won't have access to those anymore. We won't be able to use them anymore. We'll be, is that correct? Like, well, for example, like songbooks, hymnals. Do we have to buy those, or? You can keep those. We can keep okay. Or things of that nature, things that I'm thinking, well, okay, this might only cost us $200,000, but in the long run, it may end up costing us a lot more if we have to resupply our congregation.
We buy the Sunday school material and all that now. Is that right, Ms. Peggy? Don't we order that? There are other places we can go to get that. We have to pay. The hymnal books, I don't, you can keep those. Yeah. Give her the mic, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Do we have the funds to disaffiliate? And if we don't, where would those come from?
Good question.
Okay, so
Okay, thanks. So as of today, no, we do not have the funds to get out. That would be something that the church would either have to raise the money or we would have to borrow the money. Different churches have done different things. We've had to hire an attorney, which is a firm down in Florida that has done for a lot. How many churches they have done this year in South Carolina. But they were very inexpensive. I think it's just something they're giving back. But they'll help us with we have to get a new name and we have to get a new law, like a new entity, then we'll have to open new accounts. And at that point, we can either borrow money if we need to get out, or we'll do a fundraiser to try to get the money to get out.
So the bottom line, the money come June 30th. By June 30th, if the congregation votes to disaffiliate, the money has to be in an escrow account by June 30th, because the United Methodist Conference will take those funds at that time, okay?
We cannot borrow against any of the property. That has to be free and clear.
I know that there are a lot of churches that have been borrowing, and from a lending standpoint, they do offer that to churches. It's a little bit more of a grace than they do for regular businesses, I guess.
We retained a law firm out of Florida. It's called the NCLL, the National Center for Life and Liberty. We paid them $1,000 to retain them, and they will do all of if you should vote to disaffiliate, you have to close this church, and you have to open it right back up as a new entity, and you can't use the United part in your name, okay? But for $1,000 a year, the church can keep that law firm on retainer, and they'll take care of everything. Now, if we have litigation or anything like that, that's going to be extra. If you have, there's some filing fees that are going to be involved in there, but they're minimal cost. But I'll tell you, the law firm that we hired is, they're a nonprofit organization. They have handled, I think the last time I talked with them, they had handled already this year several hundred churches leaving, Methodist church leaving. And so they know how to, if the church should decide to disaffiliate, they are very familiar with what all needs to be done. They have sent us checklists and things like that. But you can't really do anything along those lines until the congregation decides which way they want to go. And I think one thing to keep in mind is that, if the church decides not to do this, all of this is, it just goes away. We remain in the United Methodist Church, and we're at the mercy of the General Conference listen, there's no way to tell what they're going to do or what they're not going to do. It has been, I think, if we go by past history, they're becoming more and more progressive. And I think the more that the conservative church, traditionalist churches get out, the more likely they're going to move more, because they don't have the resistance then to the progressive movement. So, we are at their mercy.
And I think it's important that you recognize that all of us members of the discernment committee, this isn't an easy thing. This is tough, and this is it's not something anybody wants to face, for sure. It's not. You're not on, I don't think, Sambo.
Maggie, Hugh just said about some of the litigation that might be going on already with some of the churches that have chosen to disaffiliate. Has there been any court rulings regarding this broad issue?
No, but I think we were told there's like a class action suit opened. You talking about the fact that we're having to pay to get out? Yeah, I
Yeah.
think when we did our research and different things I read, but we're not part of that we're not entered into anything.
I think it's been rumored that, just like the law firm that we have got on retainer, there is some rumor that there's going to be, at some point in the future, there's going to be a class action lawsuit brought against the general conference. But again, that's looking into a crystal ball that we don't know, you know.
Pastor Kathy, you had something.
I just think it's important to say that half of the churches that have left, have disaffiliated, come from the southeastern jurisdiction. That is where we are. We're in that jurisdiction. We are a conservative part of this nation. You live in that conservative area. But also there is a little bit of autonomy for each jurisdiction. There are 5 of them. And one jurisdiction does not tell another jurisdiction how to run their jurisdiction. So just to give you that information, you know, it's inaccurate to give the picture that there are churches leaving the denomination all over this country and all over the world. That's not accurate. They're leaving in this jurisdiction. And they're not ordained leaders.
I don't understand. We're putting the cart before the horse. Who knows if they're going to positively change the discipline? And how long have they been trying to change this thing? We do all this, spend all this money, and they don't change it, then we've made a huge mistake.
Well, it's 10 cents on a dollar. It's $200,000 to own our church.
Doesn't matter.
Ourselves.
I'm saying if they don't pass this, if the discipline isn't changed,
Right.
then we are getting out of a church that I've been a member for 70 years at least, for nothing. And it's costing us a bunch of money to do that. I mean, maybe $200,000 to you isn't much money, but it's a lot of money to me.
I didn't say that.
We're
Y'all
just
can
the
vote for it
deliverers.
any way you want to.
We're just providing the information. We understand.
So we don't know. To answer that question, we don't know.
You don't know. That's the point.
But they have forced us to make a vote on something that we don't have the information about. Because the clause, the way to get out now, goes away as of the 31st.
That's
of
too
this month.
bad.
I agree. So if they vote to change the book of discipline, would you want to get out? That's a thought that you have to, I can't make that decision for you. But if the book of discipline is changed, then would you prefer to get out? And if so, what rules and regulations are you going to be able to use, if any, in order to get out? We don't know.
Have you guys have you discussed what are the benefits, what are the pros and cons of owning your own church? What are the, why would you need to do that? And if in the future the church dissolved, are there legalities that stipulate because you are a nonprofit and you are tax exempt, would the proceeds of this church have to go to another nonprofit? So I'm just curious. I'm devil's advocate.
Right, and I don't know. I
you
can't
know,
answer that question.
I don't have a.
I don't do this
thought
stuff on
in this.
a daily basis, but we absolutely can find out.
When was the changes made to the discipline that dictated that on the 31st of 2023?
I think it was changed. Yeah, 19.
That's when they changed it and said, this is when the clause is going to be removed?
Yes.
Well, they set an expiration date that they'd then changed again, if I understand, because COVID. They didn't meet. Right, the pandemic kept them from meeting, so they didn't vote then. So they extended the time. It was earlier. I think it was like over a year ago that this deadline was originally, right? The original deadline has been changed, which. Oh, Miss Maggie, go.
Y'all know that? Okay, what y'all are talking, I think there's a couple things that need to be clarified. There's two conferences that are going to be held. First one is end of March, 1st of April, is the general conference. That's the nationwide conference where the churches from other nations, other countries are coming in. Yeah, it's a global, worldwide. That will be held in Charlotte. That's where the discipline decision will be made. So by the 1st of April, you'll know whether the global United Methodist Church decides to leave the discipline as it is, as they voted in 2019, to leave it as it is. Then you have got, no, that's not right.
Well, they didn't vote in 2019 to leave it as it is.
It's just tabled.
They didn't have enough time to decide. They appointed a committee
Okay,
to
that's right.
study, and then they would come back. Unfortunately, the pandemic caused the cancellation of the conferences that were to be held afterwards. So in essence, the whole matter was never fully resolved.
Yeah. And then you've got the second conference, which is the one that we're talking about, that we have to make that vote for, to disaffiliate or not, and that's annual conference, and that will be held in May and June, I think, or somewhere around the
I think I have
1st of June.
June.
And then that's when the vote from our South Carolina conference will vote whether to allow the churches that have requested disaffiliation to leave. It will be a vote on the floor. Our delegates will vote then too. But the clause that y'all talking about that expires December 31st, we had to be in that process before December 31st so we could start on it, but you still have, it doesn't have a, what do you call that, a sunset or whatever. The bishop says if you get in it and you decide you want to wait till later on to make that decision, you can do it because we started the process before December 31st.
But we also have to have our vote by,
You got to have that vote by a certain time.
March
But
1st.
just because you vote to discern,
Right.
and later on in that process, disaffiliate, later on in that process, if you decide before the vote at annual conference, you can just say, thank you, we're done. Yeah.
Thank you.
You don't have to necessarily carry through it, but you've got to start the process, you've got to have the discernment, you've got to have the vote, and then all that's left up to the conference, how much you're going to pay. But you have until that vote at annual conference, I guess you have until June the 30th. If we don't have the money, or if you decide otherwise, you're good.
so if at annual conference, let's say we vote, the congregation votes to disaffiliate. At annual conference, we are technically allowed to remove ourselves from, we can stay with the United Methodist Church if we choose.
Yes.
Based off of how they vote.
Yes.
So we have to go through this process. We might not have to pay a dime towards it, other than the $1,000 that we've spent for the law firm. But we can always back out if the church decides to stay the same.
And I think that's the most challenging part for people to understand is that we are technically being told you have to put the cart before the horse without knowing everything. And we are being pushed to make a decision without knowing exactly what will happen. But good to know is that the decision we make doesn't mean we have to follow through on it if they make a different decision when they vote. So that kind of gives you a good feeling. You have like the opportunity to change your mind.
Like by June 30th, if we have voted to disaffiliate, and we find out that the amount of money is going to be $300,000, so we can change our mind before the vote, or I mean, after we voted, we can change our mind and say, well, we decided the money's too much, we can't come up with it, so we're going to stay. Can we do that?
Yes, ma'am.
That's what I'm understanding. Okay.
As long as the vote in June is for us to stay, if we go through this process, we vote to disaffiliate, something changes, as long as that vote at the June meeting is to stay, we can stay.
I would advise not to get too hung up on the money, because what we have been told and what this committee has been told, the work that they've done to come up with a total is pretty close. The unknown pieces are not going to be so substantial that they would keep you from making the decision. So we're talking about a pretty close, they've allowed this committee to find people to appraise it and do all that. And that's pretty, the conference didn't do the appraisers. Other people did the appraising. So I wouldn't get too hung up on not knowing the exact total. It will not affect it as much as you would, it wouldn't be 300,000.
Thank you. And I personally think we, on the high end, are 200. Really. I mean, we did that just to be safe.
I did, I couldn't see that screen very well, where it told what the value of the church. Did I see $500,000 is what
So
the entire?
Right, so the church itself was appraised at $500,000. That's the church, the lot that it's on, Parlor Hall, the preschool, and the youth building, all appraised for $500,000. The parsonage was $330,000, I think.
Who did this appraisal?
John Wright.
St. Matthews.
John Wright.
He's out of St. Matthews. He's done a lot of the local churches around here recently.
You got to remember, when you do an appraisal, where's Dawn? You got to have comparables, and you got to have, I mean,
yes.
it was not done to a sales approach the way that you do a house. Now,
Gotcha.
the parsonage was done through that sales approach, because you have comparables
Right.
to compare it
So
to.
that's fair
Yeah,
market
not a lot of
value
people are
versus
buying
replacement
churches.
costs. So
Yeah.
to replace this church, we're talking millions of dollars if we wanted to rebuild it. But as far as what is a used church worth on the market, they estimated around $500,000.
Gotcha.
And you can't build it for that for sure, obviously.
Oh, you're right.
But it's, I don't know, Dawn, you can chime in, but I think it has a lot to do with what do you do? Who wants it?
Parking, the available parking. If you sold it as a commercial building, there's just not the available parking, so I think that hurts the
Right,
value.
right.
Okay.
No, that answers my question. I just wanted to clarify.
We were shocked too, if that.
I do have another question. If we, and I'm asking these questions, I think some of the questions I'm asking, I do know the answer to, but people, I've been approached and people have asked, and so I'm asking these questions openly so maybe they can get answers too. Are we streaming this as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Oh,
so maybe they can get answers as well. That's why I'm asking.
And so also in the bulletin today, I don't know if you saw the announcement about today we were doing this. We're also doing this again on January 7th. And the discernment committee members, all of our names and our contact information as far as phone numbers are in the bulletin today. If you have a question, give us a call. And again, we'll send these slides out to everyone as well that would like to have it.
Councilman's
So-
coming in the back door.
I think I have maybe two questions. Is there a possibility that we can get a copy of this PowerPoint presentation? Because I couldn't, oh, you did say that? Okay, I'm sorry. And then the second part of the question,
I'll send it with you.
It's just not in color.
yeah, the second part of the question is, do we know, like I don't know what the services are that we get from the United Methodist itself. I know there's lots of conferences and meetings, and I think recent activities, we've had some of the lawyers that they have involved with what we've done. Is there, did we get to that? I saw the information about theologically what are the differences between the churches, but do we have any of those comparables?
We do have some. Miss Peggy, would you like to kind of touch on that a little bit, if you don't mind? Sorry.
I'm not sure what you're asking me to respond on.
So basically, as far as what the United Methodist Church offers us, you're basically talking on a daily, like,
Yeah.
as far as pastors, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's about the only thing I can really, Kathy can probably tell us more about it, but I know when I was at conference, I was surprised at the amount of involvement the United Methodist Church has. But one advantage of United Methodist Church Conference is the connectional abilities. We connect with other churches that are within the conference. Our pastors are provided through the conference. I think Global also does that from what I've read.
Yes,
They will provide, I'm not sure, independence, you're on your own. For everything, even your bylaws, your everything, you'd have to start from scratch. Global, I think y'all had in that presentation that they have a book of discipline already. They have the connectional part, they'll help with the ministers. I'm not sure about the church leadership conferences within Global, but here, the United Methodist Church provides opportunities for people in positions of leadership in the churches to connect with other churches and learn what you're supposed to be doing.
And they also helped us this summer. They did step in and assist us with, they had an attorney and
Yeah.
Some other services they provided us.
I'm happy to discuss that. The United Methodist Church has been around a long time. They've worked through a lot of problems and issues and come up with a lot of good ideas about how we can be connectional. And so you've got, a church that's connected, and so you have ministers that, can have opportunities, they have benefits, and you get better benefits, through having more ministers, you get better health benefits and all kinds of things like that. So if a church goes out on its own, they have to, get their own ministers, and they have to come up with their own benefit packages and that sort of thing. As far as being in a connectional system, you've got, it's just countless youth retreats. You've got confirmation retreats. You've got the workings of the whole church. You get a website that you can go to, and you can get information. Connectional being in such a way that even a church that can't meet its bills. I've been the part of a church that can no longer pay its debts, and the monies from the district and other churches paid they're keeping their lights on because they had ministry coming out of that church. They could no longer sustain the money to run that church, but they thought that the ministry there was valuable enough. So there are a lot of things having to do with being connectional that, that we need to consider. We talk about paying apportionments. Apportionments do a lot of good in the world. They do a lot of good in this country and beyond. We talk about paying them, and I see them as sort of like a tithe, the church's tithe. But those apportionments help a lot of people. So, I think that when you start talking about starting from scratch, that is a lot of work. Where are you going to get health benefits for a pastor? Or are you just going to decide we're going to have a pastor and we're not going to give him any benefits? Those are things that your leadership will have. And if you have a pastor and you don't offer them any benefits, I don't know. I wouldn't pastor a church without benefits. But, you know.
So I would just say, having said that, if the congregation votes to disaffiliate, with the research that the committee's done, the information we've gathered, the Global Methodists would be somewhat of a mirrored image of what we currently are. I mean, I would say that would absolutely be the closest thing. Independent would be a heck of a Band-Aid we'd have to rip off. Yes, sir.
Yeah, like I said, I'm really against disaffiliating. I don't need that. Do I?
I'll hold it.
All right. But if we've got, is this a fact? We have until June the 30th to make a final decision?
I think it's the 25th.
Is that a true
is when-
statement?
I think it's the 25th is when they vote.
So what we're being told, we have to vote as a church on February 4th. That is a requirement that the district has set that date. Once we make that vote, Ms. Peggy said if we find out that we all get together and change our mind, we can change our mind. We just have to enter into this, make the decision by those deadlines if we want to make the final decision to get out. But the vote will get us to the steps that the conference requires, and then we can still change our mind. Is that right, Ms. Kathy? Ms. Peggy, that's what we understand, right? Ms.
Yeah,
Kathy,
that's
is
what
that
I
correct too?
understand. I
Do you
don't
know
know
anything?
about I don't know about the 25th. I know last year at conference, as of June the 30th was the last day the disaffiliating churches were officially a part of the United Methodist Church. July 1st, they had to change all their billboards and everything, all their stuff were changed to their new entity, whether it was global, whatever. Most of them went global, I think. There were some independents. But now, I'm not sure about the deadline but that was what I was told, that you have. The vote for annual conference is the first part of June. That's when the delegates will vote to allow you to disaffiliate or not. And then you have a certain period of time that money's got to be in that escrow account. And until that last day, I guess you can change your mind if you want to. I would think you would probably have, well, the discernment committee, y'all's job's not done after this, you know that.
Yes, ma'am.
They didn't know that when they
didn't laugh
got
at
into
that.
this, but it's not over yet. And it won't be over until we actually change, if we vote to change. But I'll have to check into that a little bit more to try to find out about when is the last day you can say yes or no. But I know that money's got to be in escrow because Matthew told me that the other day, I think. It has to be in that escrow account by that last day, whatever the time period is. They changed the time zone from last year to this year, so.
And I'll reach out to the DS
Yeah.
this week and find out for sure before we do this again on January 7th, what those answers are. Anybody else? We're good? We're going to do this again, y'all, so don't act like this is the last time. We'll be here on the 7th. Pastor Kathy?
Of owning your own church. What does that really mean?
Okay. We'll include that as well next time. Thank y'all.